The Macabre World podcast is brought to you by Darker Art Studio, home of real human bone jewelry. Stock and custom pieces are available, so visit us on the web at www.darkerartstudio.com and show them your darker art side. Macabre World, a podcast from Darker Arts Studio, where we explore the dark, strange, and unusual from this world and beyond. Hello and welcome to the Macabre World podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Digati. With me today, very special guest, we have the former CEO and president of the Iowa Lottery, in which, during his tenure, he cracked the United States' largest lottery fraud case. Please welcome author of Dare to Dream, Dare to Act, and co-author of the $80 billion gamble, the inside story of how a suspicious ticket, hot dogs, and Bigfoot foiled the biggest lottery fraud in United States history. Welcome, Terry Rich. Thank you so much, sir, for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This sounds like a lot of fun. Let's do it.
Okay, so before we get into this crazy lottery story, and I kind of feel bad for Bigfoot for being implicated, but once you know this crazy, you've worn a lot of hats prior, outside of this. You have been production companies and zoos. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I grew up on a farm in small town Iowa, town of 50 people. How about that? Went to school, went to college, and I was going to be a math major. And someone, I got into a class where one was not equal to zero. You had to prove that. And I thought, man, this is crazy. And somebody said, you can go over here and talk and make a living. I thought, oh, I'm in. So I got into TV and radio and graduated, got into cable television when all my buddies were going into broadcast. And it became one of the coolest things I've ever done to be able to help start the MTVs and the CNNs of the world back in the real early days when cable wasn't cool, to work with a guy like Ted Turner, who was just absolutely crazy. But at age 40, I thought I'd work there the rest of my life, and do all right. But they cashed us out. We had someone take a run at our stock. We were a New York Stock Exchange company. And so I'm thinking, oh, geez, what do I do next? And what I did was do free HBO previews. I started doing that when I was with the company, but you'd basically come home, turn on HBO or turn on your TV, and you'd get free HBO and think, oh, Marge, something's happening here. So that you'd wonder what's going on. But we'd come on after the movie and say, hey, now's the time to order HBO. And so I started doing that as a company when my cable company sold out, and did that for about 10 years for HBO's, ESPN's, did all the Bo Holyfield pay-per-view fights to promote buying cable television products. So, well, at age 50, you know what happens? Midlife crisis. So I decided I got to get off the road, be with my kids, do something different. And I had an ex-governor call and say, hey, they're thinking about shutting down the zoo. It's losing a lot of money. Would you be interested in running the zoo? Well, I grew cattle. Zoos can't be that much different growing giraffes. So I ran a zoo for 4 or 5 years, turned it around, got about 15 million in endowment, so it'll be around forever. Fantastic. And then I got a call from the current governor who said, hey, our lottery director's retiring. You like marketing and promotion. Would you run the lottery? Well, never done that before. So I got to give away over $1 billion in the 10 years I ran the Iowa Lottery. So each one of these careers have been different, and it's just been fun to meet so many different people and do different things.
Oh, I agree. My midlife crisis is a podcast, if you hadn't noticed. But I mean, there's a whole. Now, how many people in the state of now? Iowa is a pretty big state. I'm from a very small state. I'm originally from Rhode Island. So sure. we have a lottery at 6 guys that sit in Cranston. Just kidding. But Iowa is a substantial state. So when we're setting up like to hear more about this story, what kind of money are we talking about? Let's be obscene and talk about the money.
Well, you start with the amount of money that's spent on sports tickets is about $50 million, 10 million music, all the music tickets sold in America, and movies, about 10 million. Well, you add those all together, they don't equal what are sold in lottery tickets in the United States a year. It's over $80 billion. That's with a B. If you add all those others together, they still don't equal to how many tickets are sold with lottery. So when you're messing with the reputation of an industry like the lottery industry, you're messing with a lot of people's lives, a lot of people's money, and things that go to good causes across the U.S. So that's kind of the scope of what happened once I get in this, because I'm a marketing and promotions guy. You may be able to tell that. But when you think you might have fraud within an organization, you kind of go,
now what?
I guess we got to get a little more serious and handle this one.
And how do you spin that? because it's not, I think in a business, and correct me if I'm wrong, like the lottery. Now, I know that at least in my home state, I would imagine it works similar in other states, that the revenues from the lottery, that my dad used to call it the idiot tax. And that's a very common phrase. I realized it wasn't
Well,
that clever on his
yeah,
part. But he says, when you do buy a ticket, he says, you play once in a while, you take a chance. He says, because the money goes for things like the senior programs, improving the roads.
that's
It
right.
goes for a lot of state improvements. So it's not literally money that's just thrown into the wind. The revenues are put to good civic use.
I always find that the people who lose absolutely use that excuse for playing, and that's good. I mean, lotteries were set up because the mafia, the organized crime, had all these numbers, and there was a lot of fraud and corruption. So the states took them over. So the state runs it. So you can call the lottery director or the governor, say, "Hey, I think something's screwy," if you think there's fraud. But the money that is made, about 25% of all money spent on lottery tickets, goes to good causes like education, public health, law enforcement, that sort of thing. So it has helped states across the U.S. for sure.
Lottery, corruption. You're talking about state corruption. I wouldn't have any idea what you're talking about being from Rhode Island. Do you
Yep.
know, Terry, in my lifetime, two governors, one congressman, the mayor of Providence twice have been indicted just in my lifetime.
Well, being a public official, I mean that it would really be easy, and as I tell this story, to know that people suggested my counterparts in other states, because each state has their own lottery director,
Sure.
suggested that we should just be quiet because you're gambling with this $80 billion, and that's how we kind of came up with the book. But the majority of folks said no, let's figure it out because we got to make sure the games are fair and honest, and that's how we got started. So it all started one day when I was on a cruise ship down near Belize, if you can believe the crazy illegal island of Belize with all the things they do. And I get a call to say, hey, we just had someone say they had the ticket for a winning lottery. It was called Hot Lotto. Hot Lotto is like Powerball or Mega Millions, just a smaller regional game.
Right.
Jackpot was $16.5 million, and they said we have a winner. Well, this had been purchased almost 11 months earlier in a convenience store. A rather large gentleman in a hooded sweatshirt on a very warm day came in, played a play slip to say, I want to buy tickets for this Hot Lotto game. And lo and behold, 8 days later, $16.5 million annuitized value, about $10.5 million in cash, was won. But no one came forward at that point. So we started barking. People can take some time to claim their ticket. You want to
Isn't
talk
that
to a lawyer,
advisable?
talk to a tax accountant, that sort of thing.
They usually
Uh,
tell folks to kind of
yeah, know
take a
where you
little
want
bit,
to do so you
get
pay the least
organized
amount of
before.
taxes. Yeah.
Right.
But no one came forward, and we kept barking. Well, in 6 months, we started saying, "Hey, you don't have much time. You only have a year to claim this ticket." But we're halfway through the year. Did you lose it? Check your visor. Some people hide their lottery tickets in the toilet behind the tank behind the toilet. They're worried that something happened. But we want you to claim it. So we got all these false claims. People come in and said, "Hey, I think." One lady said, I think my husband's an organized crime and he's a truck driver. I haven't seen him for 6 months. I know he shops at that place, so he must have had it. Other people were saying, I know the clerk stole it from me. So we had 15, 20 people that were even hiring lawyers to say, we want our money. Well, we said, no ticky, no pay. So we kept going until I had that call on the ship where they said we had a lawyer call from Canada. And he said that he bought it. But when we talked to him, we asked him what he was wearing, and he said he was wearing tweed pants and a sports coat. And we know it was a
Whoops.
400-pound guy that was in a hoodie. So we think we have fraud. Do we pay it? And we decided not to. We said, let's let the courts decide. If we pay it, we know we'll never see the money again. So
Right.
that began a journey this guy called back and said, well, it really wasn't me. I said it was me, but it wasn't me on the tape. And we had fraud, so we're going to arrest the guy when he shows up. Well, he didn't show up. But two lawyers from Des Moines showed up saying, hey, we've got a guy in New York that says he has it. He's sending us the ticket. And with an hour and 15 minutes left in the number of times to be able to claim the ticket, they show up with the ticket. An hour and a half left. Ding, ding, ding. It just didn't feel right. So we
That's an
announced we had
11th
the
hour,
ticket.
if ever there was. So literally, just to make sure I understand, in just a few hours, the ticket would have been void for $16 million.
That's right. And the interesting part was the lawyer in New York FedExed it on the day before to them. They got it. Can you imagine during Christmas break if the receptionist hadn't passed that FedEx on to the lawyers that were supposed to claim it?
Oops.
They'd have missed it.
Yeah.
So We said, no, we're not going to pay it. Went back and forth. They said they'd sue us, all this sort of things. And ultimately, 3 weeks later, they sent us a note and said, hey, we're just going to give it up. We're going to withdraw our claim. Our client doesn't want the publicity. I don't care if you're Bill Gates, 16.5 million bucks, not pocket change, you know?
Right.
So we knew something is open. So our Department of Criminal Investigation, DCI, we call it, went ahead and went after it. So that's the first part of the ticket. We went after trying to figure out who bought that ticket and why wouldn't they come forward? Well, we knew the guy in Canada and the guy in New York were somehow related. And so they finally, after a couple of years of just going through all the legal work to get so they could interview him, went in and they asked him the simple question, which I hope you're never asked. Do you want to be the defendant or do you want to be the witness? And they both said, okay, we'll be the witness. Yeah, we're together. In fact, the trust that they had set up in Belize, the president of the trust was a guy in Canada and the executor was the guy in New York. So they both said, we got the ticket from a lawyer in Houston, Texas. And he had a client we believe's name is Robert Rhodes. Well, we didn't know who Robert Rhodes, and we couldn't figure out where all that came together.
So
well,
Texas is now involved.
Say that again.
This is going from Iowa to New York to Canada to Texas.
We're back to Texas.
Oh gosh.
But we couldn't figure out how this person would ever be connected. When we looked him up, and you just go on social media and see what Robert Rhodes looks like. Didn't look like the guy in the hooded sweatshirt. Wasn't big enough. So they went down to try to interview him, and he just disappeared along with these lawyers. So it was getting close to the end of statute of limitations, where we either had to charge someone or it was just going to be over. And we got a lot of pressure saying, don't hurt our industry. Don't gamble with the $80 billion. Don't ruin our reputation by saying there's fraud in our industry. Well, understandably, a new attorney in the Attorney General's office came in and said, release the tape. Let's release it and see if anybody recognizes that, because we kept the tape, because if you show a tape of a big guy in a hooded sweatshirt and you couldn't really see what the face looked like, and somebody's going to get a hooded sweatshirt and come in and say that was me.
Right.
So we finally released it, and all of a sudden we got calls and said, hey, that's Eddie Tipton. Who's Eddie Tipton? Well, he worked for a vendor called the Multi-State Lottery Association as the chief security officer, which oversaw all of the games of Powerball, this game, various other games that were drawn by multiple states in all that. And he was the one that programmed the computer that drew this game. And so immediately, ding, 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 everybody says, oh my God, and are they connected? And if I can tell your viewers and listeners one thing, if you ever do anything illegal, don't use social media or use your cell phone, because basically I couldn't believe how far back they could go back and see exactly who got called, when they got called. And we connected those two between LinkedIn and Facebook. They left their pages wide open for anybody to see that they had worked together right before this guy came to work for the Multi-State Lottery, the vendor. So they went out and talked to him, charged both him and his buddy with fraud. Okay, well, sounds like, okay, that's a little state of Iowa. No big deal. Let's just get it done, get it out. So he did it. He didn't pay the money. So, just no big deal. So on trial, he made a critical mistake. Now, you heard how we figured out the ticket came around. But on trial, they played the tape, and they wanted a character witness because he was found guilty. And he brought up his brother from Flatonia, Texas, who got on the stand and said, look at that tape. He said, that guy bought 2 hot dogs. My brother don't eat hot dogs. And everybody just went, shoo. This guy standing over here who's between 300 and 400 pounds, doesn't eat hot dogs. Well, an AP reporter picked that up, put it on the national wire.
Oh, no.
And it made it down to Flatonia, Texas, where this brother is living. And an FBI agent said, wait a minute. That's the guy 10 years ago that I thought was doing money laundering, that I interviewed in the hospital because he fell out of a tree stand, and interviewed him. And he was kind of and said, yeah, I won the Colorado lottery. And that's the brother they're trying to investigate. Or, his brother was the one that was the programmer. So that FBI agent called up to our prosecutor, and they said, hey, you might want to check this guy out too. So all of a sudden, we're thinking this is a little bit bigger than what we thought, because that Colorado lottery was won by an individual who played with the ticket, and also won by an organization called Question of Luck, a corporation in Las Vegas, Nevada. And we're thinking, we're in organized crime. We're going to get horse heads in our bed. What the heck are we opening up here? But ultimately,
I loved that movie too. I
It
do.
was a
It's a
good movie.
great.
We ultimately, so we found out all of this because of the two hot dogs. If we hadn't bought the two hot dogs, we wouldn't be talking today. So ticket, two hot dogs. But we found out that the brother is and this guy had picked up these tickets, but back to the social media. Then they got the brother's cell phone, the brother's social media, and we got all the contacts. Our lottery then, through with working with the Attorney General's office, contacted all the states to say, give us all your winners of $500 and above, and ding, 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 within a couple, 3 days, we found 5 major jackpots that had been won by computers that this gentleman, Mr. Tipton, had programmed. And
Huh.
so, but we didn't have the smoking gun until we checked a computer in Wisconsin that had won and found the code. And so ultimately we found that code, and that's how we got through to have something to go in and go back to. Do you want to be the defendant or you want to be the witness? The best friend, Robert Rhodes, the original guy that we named that we had, he flipped immediately, and the other two said, okay, you got us. And we got all three and figured out the entire scheme that had gone on. And that's how a lottery ticket and two hot dogs helped crack the largest lottery fraud. But Bigfoot came in right in the middle, because when we started investigating Tommy Tipton, I'm going into a press conference, and usually an attorney general and the Department of Criminal Investigation head are very somber when they're talking about putting somebody in prison. They come in giggling. I thought,
Oh, it's
what's that
never
all
good when
about? They said,
somebody's
you didn't hear
giggling in a
about Bigfoot?
courtroom.
Yeah, you haven't heard about Bigfoot? I said, no. He said, yeah, Tommy Tipton and Eddie a little bit, but Tommy Tipton was a huge Bigfoot hunter. And he was having his Bigfoot friends claim the tickets. And so the very first jackpot in Colorado, Tommy had a buddy, Alexander Hicks, take the ticket to win the lottery. And Alexander Hicks brought it back in cash, but he did it in sequential $100 bills. That's what the bank gave him. Tommy said, that's going to look like money laundering. So he started uh, trying to go to fireworks dealers and exchange $100 bills, and they got scared and called the FBI, and that's how Bigfoot got involved. And they even used another Bigfoot win that they had in Kansas. Listen to the names of the guys who were Bigfoot hunters that helped. The Kahn brothers. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It
No,
just
you
is an
can't.
amazing
That's
story. And that, in a very big nutshell, is how lottery ticket, two hot dogs, and Bigfoot help solve that
that's
case.
just
They all pled
crazy.
guilty. Eddie went to prison, and everybody probation and restitution.
So after obviously there was this had to have been a big hot news topic, not only in Iowa, but I mean throughout any of the states involved. Because I don't know, you probably had know that there's quite a few states involved in these larger draws like Mega Millions and and Powerball and stuff.
Absolutely.
So it's no longer just the one state really, and industry wide, as you said, it's comprised of it's worldwide too. I mean, I have European relatives who play lotto and things like that. So when something like this, what's the ripple effect of something like this? What's the effect on the industry and on the consumer?
Fortunately or unfortunately, when people like to gamble, and that's why I like that the lotteries are run by states here. I think it's much more ethical. If you look at the billions and billions I mean, people are going to gamble no matter what. If they didn't have the lottery, they would be doing the illegal, the mafia, the organized crime would be doing that. But if you look across all of the draws that happen in lotteries, there have been very few incidences like this, and the security measures that lotteries have are phenomenal. The number of security things that are on those little tickets are just unbelievable. The checks and balances they have to check on how they. And if you walk into a convenience store anymore, you're going to be videotaped and probably audio taped at any time you work. So it's pretty good, easy to catch fraud. So people say, well, this one was done with the ball, so he put a new code in the computer that drew the balls. How do you solve that? Why isn't that still happening? Well, they changed the procedures so that somebody can't write the code, compile the codes, oversee it, all the different. So the checks and balances, as you have in any, you have a small school district, somebody writes the checks and writes the purchase orders, they're pretty ripe for fraud. So those have been changed. But they're saying, well, why don't you do everything with balls? Well, actually, in 1985, there was a movie, John Travolta and Lisa Kudrow, called Lucky Numbers, where Pennsylvania Lottery had ping pong balls, and the draw officer and the guy that was I think he was the announcer, took some latex paint and injected in everything but the 2s and 4s and went like that. So they were heavier, and then bought all the combos of 2s and 4s and won the lottery. Well, they got busted because the mafia were using the organized crime up there was using those for their underground games. And they called and complained, and lo and behold, they went in and rechecked the tape, and yeah, they got busted. So balls can be rigged, so can that. It's the checks and balances that make it work, and there's so few. I mean, I can think of 4 or 5 instances in the last 40, 50 years versus we think of any other industry. There are thousands of incidences. So there's a lot of good oversight. There's one other that was kind of fun, one in Milan, where they had the draw officers had young kids draw the balls, and they blindfolded them, had them reach in and pull the balls. But when the kid would get sick or couldn't get in, they'd have their nieces or nephews come in, and they might heat the balls that they want to draw
they
on,
pick
or
the
they
hot
might
one.
cool them way down, or they
Right.
might shave them down or put oil on them or something. And they'd tell them, hey, just pull out they got busted too. So I like to sleep at night, and I think that trying to fraud something, you always have to look over. And in today's society, the technology is phenomenal on security.
Well, I have I have a background. I worked in EMS, but I worked in Atlantic City, and you end up going through when you're in and out of casinos, they want to minimize the exposure of public safety personnel to the consumers. So you end up taking a lot of back roads and back hallways and in the service areas more so.
Yep.
And to see the amount of security now, just in your average, and this is an Atlantic City casino, they are high tech. The amount of tech and the walls and walls of all of the wiring and networks framework and all of that crazy stuff. And you are on camera because, I don't want to be a witness or a defendant for the record, but
Yeah.
I have been a witness. And many times now technology is our witness.
Yeah.
Because there's video, because there's surveillance.
Well, you brought up a good point on the casinos, because there was actually a fraud that happened in the casinos. Same kind of deal. Computers run random number generators, run the slot machines, and a guy in the Las Vegas Commission figured out that certain machines, that if he saw 2 bells and a whistle or whatever, that 3 pulls later it hit the jackpot. So he went to Atlantic City, and he went into their security group as a kind of an oversight type deal, and then would radio down, and they caught him too. So, there's a lot of different ways, but there are 3 reasons. If you're in an organization, if it's a church, if it's a school, nonprofit, or your business, especially small business, the 3 things is the U.S. Association of Certified Fraud Examiners say will cause absolute fraud, will open the door, as it did for Eddie. First one is financial need. Now, everybody wants more money, right? You and I want to make a lot more money, but it usually is
I won't say no.
to force gambling or booze that takes people over the edge. Oh my God, what can I do to get more money? But then they have to have the opportunity. And if you have the checks and balances, if somebody can write the checks and write the purchase orders, they have all the opportunities. They don't have that check and balance. So you got to make sure that you have separation of duties within an organization. That's why you have security. That's why you have accounting. And then the final, which is the toughest as a manager or a CEO to oversee, is rationale. What point do you say, you know what, they're working me too hard? Joey over here is making a lot more money than I am. That really makes me mad. I deserve it. And Ed even said that in his depot, that he was worked too hard and he kind of deserved it. He just was testing on him. It was no big deal. He's just testing. It just got out of hand. So if you have all 3 of those together, you're pretty ripe for fraud. You want to definitely watch for that.
Well, I have always, there's a Portuguese saying that my grandmother used to say that says opportunity makes a thief. And I think you just defined it. And when you talk about rationale too, I think there's levels. And my dad, I'm very lucky to have had the upbringing I had. As kooky as my family is, they really tried to get you to fly right. Because my dad would say, the guy who takes home paper clips and a stapler is still a thief.
Perfect.
He says,
perfect example. Absolutely.
He says, a lot of people will say, well, they have more. He says, when you start to rationalize small, was basically his lesson, that as you go on and your needs get greater, you will keep rationalizing until you're in a position where you're talking yourself out of the morality of much bigger crimes.
That's exactly what happened with this case. Eddie started with a small one in Colorado, got one in Wisconsin, and then all of a sudden decided to go for the big one. And when he went after the big one, the $16.5 million, he bought the ticket himself. If anybody else would have bought it, if he had told him the numbers, he probably still be doing it today. I mean, it's just if you get by with a little bit, you told a really good story there that is absolute truth, even in this case.
And I try to, to me, there is no stapler worth my job. That's my logic. Outside of if you can believe it, I'm not independently wealthy on podcast alone. I work for a large hospital system in New Jersey. I work in the information technology portion of it now because my back said no more EMS. And there is nothing, there is no office supply, there is no rule violation, there is nothing that's worth my job.
Hey, there's one other point that is also that most people forget. Finally, most good sense people thinking about it will say exactly what you said. The second step of that is there's also no way that seeing Joe or Sue over here taking those things home, I should say something. And every organization should have a hotline or someplace that's anonymous that people can say, hey, you might want to check those bills again because they're diverting some things. It just doesn't feel right.
Right.
Not something that gets people automatically fired just because you don't like them, but someplace you do that. People who have a hotline, organizations that have a hotline, have a 50% less chance of having fraud occur within their organization. And the other simple thing is, I hate policy and procedures. CEO, I don't like accountants and lawyers tell me what to do, and I have to sign all these things. But if you're hired and you're told that you have to, if you do something, you will be fired, or you may be fired, you may be prosecuted, reduces that risk also, because it's back to the little devil on the shoulder saying, yeah, I
My
better not
job
risk
isn't
my
worth
job
this.
for this.
Absolutely not. Well, again, and this isn't a true comparative, but it does illustrate to some degree. There are laws about personal health information and working in a hospital system. Yep. It is made very clear, and not just in my organization, but I think in any organization that's a large. It's, the HIPAA violations. Are you curious about such and so-and-so's, medical record? That it's just your own personal gossipy wondering. Do you look that person up? Is it worth your job if you do? Because that right to privacy supersedes all of that. We have a compliance hotline for people who can anonymously report someone who is, and I think it's proven to be very, very effective. We have an excellent group of folks where I work that do security and compliance, and they're approachable, knowledgeable, comprehensive, and no nonsense all at the same time.
That's cool. And then
they're very cool
I
people.
guess that's part of when I do a lot of public speaking to health organizations, to banks, whatever. And I always start off by just saying thank you to the IT, the accountants, and the security folks, because they really don't get any credit. The folks like me that were marketers, that were getting more sales or more money, always got the accolades. But it's so important to have those checks and balances within an organization.
Well, I think I don't look at the whole, like, I'll call it the face of the organization, because I am not the face of my organization, which is good because I have a face for radio. But
me too.
Yeah, the face of the organization are, like you said, the people. The in our case, we have co-CEOs. They're out there. They're in the media. They're doing the face work. And there's a lot of people that fire up foundations and other. So there's a lot of people that are spotlights. But then there's the rest of us. And I don't like to use the word drones or anything, because I like to think we're like a watch, all the cogs in a watch. Even if a cog is really small and out of the way, if it's not in place and doing what it's supposed to do, the big cog doesn't turn. Eventually, it all, so we're all part of the machine. And well, I don't look at that and I say, yeah, that's an important part.
You're absolutely right. I think as a CEO, the importance of having people doing the checks and balances and telling me, hey, you may have a problem here, or this doesn't look right, is really important to let me keep my job too. So you are an important cog in protecting the entire organization and an industry. It's really easy to manage when you're having good times. It's kind of when you have these adverse times, it really tells a tale of how well and how good a manager you are.
But, did we need a bigger mousetrap, a better mousetrap, or did we just have a small enough mouse that saw a loophole in this case? I mean,
yeah,
kind of wonder, like, how does this, because obviously somebody who got caught the way he did, the first thing anybody wants to say was, "What an idiot." But how much of an idiot if he was if he programmed the lottery mutters? Maybe not that much. So
Yeah, no, smart, probably a very smart guy. And back to that triangle, just financial need. His brother came to him. I believe I remember right. He said, "Hey, I want to get a divorce. I don't want to be around my wife. I need some money." And he just kind of said, "Well, I don't know if I can help you, but maybe try these numbers," because he had been experimenting with how to do this. And then his best buddy went through an SEC violation, was fined $2 million, and was desperate about, I needed the money for payback. So you just, something cracked. You can hire the best employees in the world, but if they go through if someone in your organization goes through a divorce, bankruptcy, have problem with alcohol or drugs, gambling, as I said, those change the personality and their desire of what to do day to day. If you put a $5 bill, it's fun to sometimes put $1 or $5 on the floor somewhere and see who picks it up, who doesn't, or who picks it up and tries to find the owner. Most people probably, that's back to that little devil. That's a small amount, but if somebody came to you and said, "I'll give you $1 million if you can get me this data out of your system," I guess I did it once. I got by with it. Well, that is the moral dilemma that no one can really answer until you go through it.
I think people get bolder. Just if a small scale work. That's why my dad, I think, made that impression. Like, the amount is irrelevant. It's the concept.
It's correct.
And it's like you have all these.
I'm writing that one down for my speeches. Not the amount.
It's the concept. Now, I can't be the first person to ask this. Why isn't this a movie? Will it be someday, perhaps?
A lot of people have asked that, and we've had two people take a shot at it, but with COVID, we haven't anybody it was an hour special on Game Show Network, and it was a half hour on American Greed. You can probably pull it back up on YouTube on American Greed, but the movie could happen there. There's a couple of little things. Rob Sand, the prosecutor, and the person who was trying, even had Eddie agreed to, if they got it sold, to do that. Eddie, because he's a felon, can't profit from his crime, so he couldn't accept any money. But I think he'll want to tell his story at some point, and then you can figure out whether he's remorseful now, or whether he's learned anything, or whether he's still mad that they were hosing me, I deserved it type thing. We can tell stories. So I think at some point, usually the John Travolta movie came out 20 years after it happened. So I still have a few. I'll probably be dead by the time 20 years rolls around. But
oh, come on, not these days.
We're doing podcasts. My goal since I've retired is just to reach out and have some fun and tell. Same. I'm doing a lot of banks, a lot of just unbelievable amount of conferences that just to try to tell an ethics story that isn't sad and boring and trying to scare people. I went through it. I don't want anybody else to go through it. And what was fun with the lottery is I gave away over $1 billion in my 10 years. How about that?
That's crazy.
I did that. It wasn't my money, but
right, sure, but well, let's talk a little bit about there's a lot of us have the allure, like you said, of the lottery. I mean, sometimes it's like take a chance, and I think there's a common statistic that may or may not be perfectly accurate numbers wise, that you're probably more likely to get hit by lightning.
Well,
then win a
big
great
jackpots,
big
jackpot. I'll tell you the inside secret, and it's not inside, and it's just general knowledge.
Not really a secret now.
Some people like playing scratch tickets. Your best odds are always the scratch tickets, and the higher the price of scratch ticket, the more money that percentage-wise paid out. It's the lowest payout on the $1 tickets, the highest on the $40, $50 tickets.
Sure.
But it's still probably a 50. Here's how I buy scratch tickets. Now that I'm not in it, I can play. So if I'm going to buy scratch tickets, I take, this is just my theory. It's not official, but scientifically, it usually works out. I like to win. Okay. Most people like to win.
Sure.
But I know I'm going to lose money when I play. I just want to win. So I buy, if I have $20, I divide it by 10. I buy 10 $2 tickets all from the same roll. So if I have $100, I buy 10 $10 tickets all in the same roll. And somewhere in that, lotteries set it up so that somewhere between 4 and 7 tickets, there's usually a winner. Not guaranteed now.
Right.
Usually a
and
winner.
Not necessarily a big winner.
And not necessarily a big winner. Usually that's the same amount as what you played on that ticket, not the. So if I spend $100, I'm going to find a $10 ticket probably in those 10 tickets. So I can say, yeah, I bought some tickets. I won. But in general, if I'm playing all the time like that, I'm only going to win 75 out of the $100 because that's the price payout odds of most scratch tickets, about 75%. So you're
And
still going to lose money,
25% goes
but
to
you
the
play.
house.
So I'm playing for entertainment. If you're playing for entertainment and you got $100 to blow, enjoy that. But don't reach in and grab another 100. That's the same as at the craps table. Play till you lose. And you said I had entertainment and I did it. But when you start getting into your bank account, and your wallet, credit
Yeah.
cards, you're going to get in trouble. Now, on the Powerball and those are really, really, those are big odds. So you just want to say,
Crazy
I'm going
odds.
to throw the money away because I want to say at least I tried. But I've been playing. I play a big jackpot when it's Mega Millions or Powerball because my wife says, "Hey, well, let's buy a ticket."
Well, you can't win
I'll
if you
buy a
don't
ticket.
play.
Yeah, you know how much I've won? I've played
$8.
now for a year and a half. I've won $4.
Oh, I've won 8. That I've only played like the really big ones. Well,
But it's still
because
fun because you
it
think,
is.
what if? Yeah, I might,
It's the
right?
price of admission for the dream of
Yeah,
the what if of the instant. And I don't have a problem with the idea of, a few dollars here and there because my mom in Rhode Island is still with us. She's gonna be 94. She's gonna be mad I said that on air. And they have a lot of programs where she lives, like things like life alerts for seniors
sure.
and stuff like that. The money for those types of things comes from, not exclusively, but programs like the lottery.
That's right.
And that's,
No, it goes for great causes across the U.S. And but I would say if you're playing, play to win. I mean, I don't like to play and say, "Well, I lost. I'm happy I helped someone." I mean, I think that's a great benefit. But I think if you're talking to people who are honest, would you rather win or do you want to just give money to the organization if you don't
right.
like it
You
at
can
the
always make a donation. But
end?
it's I want to say it was Alexander Pope, but I could be incorrect. Said the greatest curse you could bestow upon a man is to gamble and win.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, if I take my kids and they lose at the casino when they turn to age, that was the best lesson because they knew what the pain was if they're spending their own money trying to gamble. That's good. On the other hand, I would rather have the lotteries run again by the state and have them fair and honest than the other. That was the whole other moral of this story. We want the games to be fair and honest, so when you play, you have an equal chance with everybody else, whether it's Powerball, Mega Millions, or any game.
Right. And don't bet the bread money. There's nothing wrong with a little dreaming and a little playing and a little bit of fun. And
That's
sometimes you
right.
get a little winning. I've
Yep.
I've won at the I'm a chump change kind of gambler, but I've won a little bit at the casino or because now everything's online. Now there's online. You can actually through I know at least through the current state I live in other states too. You can actually purchase your Powerball and whatnot online through the state, so you don't even have to go to the store anymore.
That's right, and that was a big debate because the that you can Powerball Mega Millions a huge odds, 300 million to one or whatever it is. And at some point, if you allowed complete electronic online gambling, would people start trying to somebody that has a lot of money try to buy the jackpot? Because and so that always you worry about that when it's 300 million, they cost $2. That's $600 million it would cost to buy all the numbers. And you can't really do that if you're doing manual plays. That's a lot of plays to do in
Right.
3 days before the draw. But if it's electronic, someone theoretically could do that. But the thing that people don't think about is what if somebody just went in and buys one and they get lucky and hit that same number? You only get half the money, and now you've lost 300, 400, 500 million dollars. So
It's just
I think it's
crazy.
pretty well blocked from that. I think everybody still has a decent odds, but playing
It
online is a nice, easy way to do that.
it is, and it's just insane to see some of these jackpots because I actually in my band we play a few covers and one of the songs has a reference to the lottery. It's a Mary Chapin Carpenter. I feel lucky. And she says the pot's 11 million. So I called in sick to work. I know people now who won't even get out of bed and buy a ticket for 11 million because
Yeah.
we've had what $1 billion
Well, we
pools.
used to have lines at $1 million in the real early days, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and that we call it jackpot fatigue in the business because it gets up there now. If it's a billion, everybody runs there, but it's still amazing the amount of money and the amount of people that play. And again, if you play with your head, not your, not
Don't bet the bread money.
above it, you're doing well. So it's fun.
I always say, it sounds like great. My mom is hilarious. She loves to gamble, by the way. And I think when you're just going out and about and you're 94, you're already kind of a player at that point.
Yep.
So she but one of the things that she says, oh, I bought a ticket, but I would never want to win that much money. And I told her I'm happy to risk it
Yeah,
on her behalf.
absolutely happy to
But
risk.
you had the pleasure of being able to give jackpot, to be the presenter for jackpots. Does that ever go bad after people win a whole lot of money?
Oh,
It seems like there's
absolutely.
lots of.
And usually when it's high, the media really goes and finds there's a guy named Jack that he got married, divorced, or whatever. Anyway, his girlfriend killed him. Or I mean, you hear a lot of the horror stories. We worked really hard, and I think other states do too. When somebody comes in and they win a big one, when they called for the first time, we said, don't come in today. Put it in a secure place, but talk to a lawyer and an accountant. That's going to cost you money, which you probably have never spent on either of those before. Some people haven't, but you want to come in and set it up. And we've had some really good winners, and I think the two favorite are the two big ones because they did that. And they set it up so that a third of the money went to their kids in a trust, a third of the money for themselves to go buy an airplane or whatever they wanted to do, and a third of the money for nonprofits for a charity in that first year, because then they could write that down and they've helped someone rather than just send the money directly to the government. So it was they really seem to set it up, and then you can get it in the annuity. When you hear $1 billion, it's not $1 billion. It's usually around $600 million in cash, right? Most people take the cash. They say, do you take the cash? You take the annuity.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I always said I would take, if I won, I would take the cash because we as government entities at the time would buy the most conservative annuity we could buy. And so if you take the cash, then you can put it in an annuity that's a little more return on it, and you'll have more money at the end. But definitely don't just take cash and throw it in and go buy a boat. And we also said, the one thing lottery players told us is, we say, what would you tell other players? They said, well, I think I would say wait 30 days before you make your first major purchase, because you have that urge if you got $1 million in your pocket to go buy a new car. And they said, I wish I'd have bought a red Lamborghini rather than a green one. And if I just waited 30 days and let my head settle in. So wait a while to spend it. You'll still have your money. Get a lawyer, get an accountant if it's great big, are probably the big things. But the other thing we said is, we're not going to contact you after you leave. This is your money. You don't want the government in your business. Enjoy.
If at all possible.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. Like I said, I think of all the things that a lot of people, like you said, they wanted to do. House. There's a show on one of the networks.
Oh yeah.
For when folks want to buy their
house,
bigger house, and there's a lot of joy to it.
Like yeah.
There's a lot of joy to it because you see a lot of families that this was a real blessing.
Yeah. But the folks, honest to God, the people who couldn't handle the money prior to probably can't handle it afterwards, because they've blown it before, they've blown it once or twice. So that's why we always try to do that. And, the one other point here is that there are 11 states where you can buy tickets and you can be anonymous, completely anonymous.
Yes,
I've always
Delaware.
been against the anonymous, because we would not have cracked this case if we had not released the tape and not done the things and required that we know who bought the ticket. Some states will pay and not ask you who bought the ticket, but at least you have to go through a security check to make sure it's not an employee or someone who might have rigged it. And that's how we busted it. So
that's amazing. And there was a huge amount of players, I would imagine, in this. I mean,
but if you think about it, if you win $1 million, $2 million in our state and your state too, people every day make $1 million on their stocks or on their selling a farm or selling a business, that sort of thing. And they get through life okay. So winning the lottery may give you publicity. So we always said, get it out of your system right away. Get on camera. We're going to say you won, and tell everybody I've done my press interviews. Goodbye. Rather than sit back, because the press, especially when they think there could be fraud, like what we experienced, are going to be hounding you. So just do it and get it over with, and you'll find it goes away. And that's been a pretty good advice. I think this worked.
I've always said the stock market was white collar gambling.
It is.
It really is. I think we all gamble in some folks.
Driving down the street and driving 80 mile an hour versus 65. I'm gambling low with my life, But yeah,
you're also gambling that there's not a stadium around the next bend. There's gonna
remember the rationale thing we talked about. Yeah.
Exactly.
At what point do you say, wait a minute, I probably shouldn't be doing that?
And I don't want to make myself sound like necessarily a goody goody. I always loved that Dr. House on that TV show said everybody lies, because there are small, little things. Like sometimes you do it to make yourself feel better. Sometimes you do it to
Yep.
make somebody else feel better. And yeah, I assume that at least once someone, relative or partner, has said, "Does this make me look fat?" You know how to answer that, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's truthful or not.
Yep.
That's a matter of survival. That's lying for survival.
Yeah,
They,
I worked with Damon John from Shark Tank, great guy, a few months ago, and he did something that impressed me. He was writing down. He said, "I have a list. I go to bed at night. I edit it, and I wake up in the morning. I edit it." And I said, "Wow, you have that many $1 million ideas from Shark Tank to think about?" He said, "No." He said, "I've been doing a lot for everybody else, and I've helped a lot of people. These are the ideas I want to do tomorrow for me. I want to get up and have my Wheaties, or I want to have something, I want to do something that will make me feel good. And then I'm going to go out and help the world." And I thought, wow, that's a great way to get your mind in the right spirit of thinking of things, small things that will make you happy, rather than we all get pulled to make everyone else happy.
and I think self care is important. I think that's a lot of. I think you start to put yourself in positions where you're going to meet some of these big three crime symptoms. I'll call them crime, even though you were mentioning the symptoms
Yeah.
of fraud and everything. Is not everybody's going to have a job where they're going to be exposed to the opportunity to make millions. Not everybody's going to have that moment. But we all have moments throughout our day where we can make choices that benefit ourselves and those around us, and that will set us up for future success.
Yeah.
The choice, I think people mistake that these types of choices have to be huge magnitude choices, that it's small things where you choose to make better care of yourself, where you choose to express kindness where someone else doesn't. There are small things you can do. They're pavers in a larger road.
You got it. That's a good one too. Pavers in a larger road. I'm going to remember that one.
All right, you're gonna have to put me on the payroll on the next one. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the end of the freebies, Terry. But there are a lot of jokes we could make, but it's true. It's a shame that this happened, because I've been to the state of Iowa. It's full of nice people, very nice Midwestern people. The corn is delicious, although Jersey Silver Queen may rival it. But we want to keep the glitz and the shine on the glitz and glamour of this. I don't think we like to see the seedy underside, even though people throng, in the media, they love it. They love a fishy story. They love it. I think we like to see people get caught. I don't think it's like we want the dirty part. Well, maybe a little. It's sordid. We enjoy the sordid to some degree. It's titillating, but I think it's empty without the denouement of the person being caught. The Tipton brothers are serving time, are they not?
They are. They all served their time. Eddie got up to 25 years. He just got released on parole. He's back in Texas. So after 4.5, 5 years under our statutes, if it was federal, it'd still be in for 25 years. But he's now out and hopefully living a new life in Texas.
So but we want to hear that the guys in the White Hat. Well, it took a huge coordination of resources and
Oh
teams
man,
to do
cost
this.
us a lot of money. We got no money back because we didn't pay any jackpots out for restitution. But you just you like closure. Most people don't get in a. This is the frustrating part sometimes of our legal system. If you have a murder, rape, assault, it's appealed and appealed and appealed and appealed to Supreme Court. In this, three people, the case was solved and had enough evidence that three people pleaded guilty and served their time, and we got closure to say that we did the right thing. Because you doubt yourself, and you're gambling, back to the $80 billion gamble. You doubt yourself that, did I do the right thing? Did we as a group do the right thing by going after this? Because if we'd have been sideways and it'd have been bigger, or to shut the whole industry down, that would have cost a lot of money for a lot of
Yeah,
good
that's
causes.
it's a crazy amount, and that's it. So what's next for Terry?
Um, I kind of retired, and I found the best retirement gig there is. That is, I get calls like this, and I get to talk to new people. I do a lot of public speaking to banks and education areas, and geez, all over the place, to speak on this subject, and it's just fun. I get to fly all over the world, and they pay me to do it, and I see their area and meet new friends and come home. So That's one. The other, which is easy, is my family all lived around me, my kids, my grandkids. So we're babysitting all the time and
Oh, there you go.
biking and trying to enjoy life. But every day looking to be thankful for doing great things and meet new people like you, Rocky.
Oh, well, thanks. It's been wonderful to meet you too. I want to let folks know that you've authored, not you've co-authored one book and you've authored another uh, that can be found on Amazon. You can look
Yep.
up Terry Rich on Amazon. You can go to terryspeaks.com to learn a little bit more because I think you've really just, only whet our appetites on this lottery. So I think those of us who are true crime junkies want to know the nitty gritty details. So you got to go ahead and read the book. And also, Dare to Dream, Dare to Act is available on, and you also do public speaking. You're able to be
Yeah,
booked for
that's
corporate
what I'm
events.
really enjoying. Selling books isn't this big deal, except to have it as a legacy, to know the facts and have it down at the time that it happened, of all the details. So this is really fun. I enjoy meeting people out doing the public speaking.
Well, it's been wonderful to have you again. You can go to terryspeaks.com to learn a little bit more about Terry Rich, and you can also go on to Amazon and read his books. And if you want more on the lotto, the amazing lotto, kooky, crazy story, go and check out the $80 billion gamble, the inside story of how a suspicious ticket, hot dogs, and Bigfoot foiled the biggest lottery fraud in the United States history. Terry, thank you so much for
Thanks,
coming
Rocky.
by.
You bet.
All right, stay kooky out there, my friends. We'll be back soon. Thank you for listening to Macabre World. You can find us on the web at www.darkerartsstudio.com.